Thank you for joining me for today's yoga class. We're going to take a few moments to work with a little pranayama. Prana means breath, yama means control, so pranayama is the art of controlling the breath. At a more subtle level, the art of controlling prana, the energy, the life force. But the first step is the mechanics of actually breathing. When we accelerate the breathing, it triggers the sympathetic reflex. Sympathetic nervous system kicks in, heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, immune system is suppressed, digestion is suppressed, all the lower abdominal areas become lethargic, and all of that energy is diverted to the muscles, the brain, the heart, the lungs in order to engage with an external threat. When we slow down the breathing in just the right way, it has the opposite effect. The parasympathetic nervous system becomes more activated. Heart rate slows, blood pressure falls, the capillaries open, blood is restored to the periphery, to the fascia. Most importantly though, the digestion improves, the function of the kidneys, the liver, the pancreas, the immune system, all the things we need to be healthy in the long run. Now, when we slow the breath down, a lot of people get into trouble because they do it too quickly, too suddenly, too aggressively, and then that triggers the exact opposite effect that we're looking for. That brings up a primordial fear of death when we begin to deny the body oxygen. So there's a fine balance. As we slow the breath down, we get more relaxed, more calm, and we slow it down just a tiny bit too much. And if you're really paying attention, you'll notice a gripping. The body begins to tighten, but even before that, the consciousness begins to grip. The consciousness begins to think about what it needs to do to restore oxygen. And there becomes this little subtle battle in the mind of control versus surrender. And if you don't notice that, the body begins to tighten. If you don't notice that, then you start getting tense and you start fighting with the breath. The trick is to notice before it even enters the body, when that discomfort enters consciousness, immediately ease up on the breathing until you restore that sense of complete surrender, complete calm. Then, over time, just see if you can slow the breath down ever so slightly without triggering that tightening or constriction of consciousness. And if you do, speed the breath up a little bit, relax, let consciousness open. And if you keep it at this level, pranayama, and slowing down the breath can be quite safe and pleasant, but more importantly, it can be more effective. So, taking a moment to get comfortable. If you know how to do a complete back breath, just leave out the front of the chest. We're going to let the chest and shoulders become passive. And if you know how to breathe into the back, that's fine. If you know how to breathe into the abdomen, the waist, the lower areas, the pelvic floor, fantastic. Breathe into those areas and allow the chest and the shoulders to remain passive. We're going to start by breathing just a little bit faster than your body would normally. So when you're ready, breathe in and breathe out, and speed up maybe 5%, just so that you're driving the breath. And then gradually slow down to a more natural rhythm. And as you do that, begin relaxing your face, your jaws, your lips, your tongue, the mouth, the space behind the eyeballs, the root of the tongue. Two or three more breaths. And then opening your eyes. So the secret to doing anything, any powerful exercise, any potentially dangerous exercise, and interfering with the breath has the potential to be dangerous because it's oxygen. It's the most primal need of the body. And the nervous system can react in unpredictable ways when we begin to starve it of oxygen, or a better way to think about it is when we deprive it of a sense of security, when it isn't sure what's going to happen next, and it isn't sure that it can count on a steady supply of oxygen. Just like you, if you didn't have money in the bank and you had house note due, you would start to get worried, even though someone promised to give you money to pay your house note. In the future, you would still be a little worried about that. Okay? Same with our breathing. So, as we slow the breath down, we need to be very cognizant of the fact that we can trigger this kind of a tightening and a constriction. Now, the larger the jumps, the bigger the steps, the more likely we are to trigger a reaction. The more subtle the adjustments, the more likely we can stay in a zone of deep relaxation and contentment and security where we feel confident. So the key is small steps, and more importantly than that, awareness. If you are careless with a chainsaw, you can get cut or worse. And if you're really paying attention, the odds of anything going wrong diminish, and the odds of something spectacular going right increase the more attention you're paying. Same is true with our breathing. So, as you're working with this, think of this as meditation, not as a controlling the breath, but as meditation upon breath, becoming more conscious of your breathing. And then, how do we take more subtle steps? Okay. Well, sometimes the difference between breathing in for 3 and out for 3, and then trying to go to 4 is too big of a step. Okay? And then we're stuck. 3, we're bored, too easy. We go to 4 and we feel that constriction. Okay? One way is to bounce back and forth. Okay? We breathe in and out for 3 a couple times. We breathe in and out for 4 once. And then we go back to 3 for 2 or 3 times, and then we go back to 4 for 1 breath, and then we go back to 3, and then we start breathing in for 4 2 or 3 times, we go back to 3, we breathe in for 4 2 or 3 times, we go back to 3. And so as you feel any sense of tightening, you back down, and when you feel that you're really relaxing into the practice, you take another step up, and feel free to move back and forth, up and down from 3 to 4, or from 5 to 6. Or 12 to 13, constantly adjusting. The more relaxed you're feeling, the more you slow the breath down, and at the first hint of your consciousness beginning to resist, you allow the breath to speed up. We'll do this for a few minutes. Make sure you're comfortable. Close your eyes. Once again, start with a slightly faster breathing. Take a moment to pay attention to the mechanics of your breath, allowing the chest to be passive, breathing into the back and into the belly and into the lower waist, any area you have access to below, maximizing those areas, minimizing the chest and shoulders. Now, slow the breath down to a normal range. Begin counting to yourself. Count at just the right speed that you're breathing in for 4 and out for 4. You can count faster or slower until that is true. Now, counting at the same rhythm, slow down the exhale. Breathe in for 4, out for 5. That becomes comfortable, breathe in for 5, out for 5. At each step, as you slow the breath down, take 2 or 3 or 4 breaths, just to make sure that your body is continuing to relax and not constrict. The only way to really know where the edge is to cross it. Until you cross the edge, you don't really know where it is. So I want you to continue slowing your breath down, paying more and more attention, and see if you can feel that first, most subtle contraction of consciousness, where the brain begins to wake up and begins to think, what's going on here? Do I need to do something? At that very instant, back down to a gentler, little bit faster breath, backing down to maybe a 5 from a 6. And then when you start to feel really calm and relaxed, see if you can go back to that number and go back and forth. And each time you feel the first hint of consciousness beginning to contract, back down. When you feel consciousness softening, relaxing, and opening, choose a higher number. Five or 6 more breaths. You're ready. Take a moment to allow the body to take over the breath. The body will probably speed up the breathing a little bit, maybe not, but allow for whatever happens to happen with the breath. And just notice what the effect was of that short pranayama practice. If you feel calmer, more centered, then you did the exercise right. If it left you feeling a little bit tighter, more anxious, then you were trying too hard, and the next time you try, be more careful and don't slow the breath down as much or as fast. Remember, we judge the fruit, we judge the tree by the fruit. Judge the exercise by how effective or ineffective it is, and the goal of this exercise is to calm the mind, calm the body. Now, let's take that with us into our yoga practice. Starting with the right shoulder blade. Lift the shoulder, draw the shoulder back, engage, and seat the shoulder blade into the spine and draw it down the back, and at the same time lift the chest. Now find the floor with your fingertips, cross the left hand over. Lift, expand, rotate. Now do the same exercise, only this time we won't do it as long. Start with the rhythm that your body breathes in most easily. Now expand into a complete breath. Here we breathe into all the other areas, the back, the pelvic floor, the belly, the sides, but we finish by continuing to breathe into the chest and shoulders. So now we allow the chest and shoulders to join in at the very end of the inhalation. Now notice the rhythm that your body breathes if you aren't interfering. And then begin to slow it down. And you're slowing it down now to find the rhythm that feels good, that works for you. 2 or 3 more breaths. Your body gets relaxed and opens, you can rotate a little further. One more breath. Coming back to center. Starting with the left shoulder blade, lift the shoulder, draw that shoulder blade around, draw it in to the spine, draw it down the back, and lift the chest. Find the floor with your fingertips. Cross the right hand over the left knee. Lift, broaden, expand, and rotate. Make the twist gentle so that we can focus more on the breath. Again, moving into an exaggerated, complete breath. And then slowing the breath down just the right amount where you maximize any satisfaction. Maximize quality of the sensations you create as you breathe in and out. Take a breath or two. Again, as the fascia releases, you might be able to rotate a little further. And coming back to center. Circling with the rib cage. As you take the ribs back, finish your exhale. As you go to the side and bring the belly forward and lift the chest, draw the shoulders back and down, chest forward and up, and finish your inhale. Reverse directions. Back to center, roll out the shoulders. Take a moment just to breathe. So as with anything, the more you pay attention to something over time, the better the nervous system becomes at identifying and being able to notice things about it. For instance, someone that has never been around poodles, all poodles might look very much the same to them. Someone that's owned a poodle can instantly tell their poodle from another, from another, from another. Every poodle looks different. The same is true with our breathing. When we begin to pay attention to our breathing, we begin to really increase our awareness, our consciousness of breath. And as that happens, we begin to notice that no two breaths are the same. Every breath is a little different. So one way of practicing yoga is in each pose. Notice how the pose interacts with the breathing, and the breathing becomes easier in some ways, more challenging in some ways. The sensations of breathing change. Taking your right hand to the floor, float the left arm. Don't let your core collapse back. Instead, bring the sternum and the chest forward and up. And take your shoulder blade and inner armpit on the left shoulder, draw back. Flare the ribs, walk the right hand away a little bit. Now notice how your body breathes if you don't put any effort into it. If you were watching TV, your mind was a million miles away, and you happened to be in this position, how would your body be breathing? Now improve on that. Improve on the mechanics of the breath and Slow the breath down, make it more fluid. Take a couple more breaths. If it feels good, you can work your way deeper into the side stretch. And coming up. Notice for just a moment the difference between the left side and the right side. See if you can feel the effects of that pose on the body. Notice how it feels to breathe in this neutral position. Now coming into the second side. Take the chest forward and up. Float the right arm overhead. Draw the shoulder back. Shoulder blade back and down. Chest forward and up. Flare the ribs. Walk your hands away. And as you're coming into the pose, notice how the position affects the breathing. Notice how your body would breathe in this position if you weren't paying attention. What areas would it breathe into? What areas of the lungs would it not breathe into? And what would happen to the rhythm? And then begin to improve on all of those elements. Breathing in not just where it's easy, but breathing in where it's more difficult to access. Learning how to direct the breath into those areas as well. And slowing the breath down. And then breathing in just the right way that it maximizes any pleasant sensations. Quality of your experience. Take a breath or two. Back to center, circling, and reversing. Rolling out the shoulders. And then sitting with angle, with the legs spread wide. Now for those of you with tight hamstrings and calf muscles, this pose may be a little more challenging, and if you have a choice between straightening the legs or keeping the spine long, keep the knees bent, keep the spine long. So this is a perfectly valid way of doing this pose. I'd much rather see the knees bent and the back straight than the back legs straight and the back collapsing. So to the degree that you need to, bend your knees a little bit. And then in order to get our feet wider, put your hands behind you, lift the hips, push your hips forward, and then reach your legs away a little bit. Now for those of you that can straighten the legs and lift, that's fine. Now the hands can go behind you to help you lift, or you can hold your legs and again use your hands to lift, or you can reach in front of you, but once again use the hands to lift up. And then don't just rely on the hands, use your core to lift. So it's a little bit like Dandasana, staff pose, in that we're building strength in our core. A couple more breaths, and then just gently notice where are you in terms of how far forward are you coming. Hands may be a way of measuring that. Where do your hands reach? Now, rotate to the left. Lift and rotate. Now try not to rotate from the shoulders or from the head. Try to rotate from your abdominal core, from the navel. Take your left hand behind you and use it to help you get extension, and you might even use it to help you lean in. If you feel any sensation in the back of your knee, bend your knee a little bit. You're going to feel the stretch in the belly of the muscle, not the fascia behind the knee. 2 or 3 breaths. Try to keep both legs strong. Don't lose track of the right leg. Reach through the heels. Engage the quadriceps on both legs. 1 more breath. Come up, lift and rotate with your core. find the floor with your right fingertips and use that hand to help you. But again, using your core primarily. Two or three more breaths on the second side. One more breath. Coming up, come back to center, and again lift, and then leaning forward one more time, and just notice whether it is a little more difficult this time, or about the same, or perhaps a little easier. Take a few breaths. It takes time for fascia to release, to open, and to permit the body to move more freely. So you can't rush yoga. One more breath. And coming back upright. And then bend one knee, bring the heel in a few inches, bend the other knee, bring the heels in, and then extend the legs in front of you. And do a half bound, forward bend. Take your right heel and see if you can bring it in all the way to the groin. Now notice how the knee responds, and if this feels anything unpleasant, awkward, or unsafe in the knee, you could walk your foot forward, or you could put a bolster under your knee, or with your hand you can just support this knee. If it feels okay, bring the heel in close, drop the knee down. Now we want to try and rotate to get our navel, which is right now pointed right evenly between the two thigh bones. We want to get it lined up with the left thigh. And the best way to do that is to keep your sit bones where they are and move the legs. Take your right foot, move it to the right, and then without your hips moving, swing the left leg in front of you. Lift, and then rotating and leaning in. The ribs will try to displace to the right. So we need to move the base of the rib cage to the left, and then actively lengthening through the left side as you lean into your stretch. Measure success by the quality of your technique, not how far you go without technique. If you have good technique, the rest will follow over time and with practice. Take a breath or two. Coming up. Switching legs. Extend the right leg, draw the left heel in. Again, you can experiment with the positioning or supporting the knee if there's any issues there. Move your left foot to the left, swing the right leg in front of you, lift, rotating from the abdominal core and leaning in. You can use the right hand to help maintain extension, but we also want to be using our core. Two or three breaths. Coming back up. And now bring the right foot in, and you're going to roll to the left and bring the heel in close. Then you're going to roll to the right and bring the left heel in closer, and then you're going to come back to center. Now the question is, are you collapsing? And if you are, move the feet further away, grab the ankles and pull your belly forward and lift your chest. And if this is an easier pose for you, bring your heels in or keep your heels in close, but do the same thing. Now take your knees, if you can do so without discomfort, take your knees down. And it's actually a very similar action to Trikonasana for those of you who've learned the spiral. We lengthen the inner thigh, we contract the outer thigh, and when we do that, lengthening, contracting, the knee will go down on its own accord. Now we can also use the elbows to help, and we can also lean forward a little bit. Maybe walk the sit bones back half an inch as you lean forward. Don't push into any discomfort, especially in the joints. If you're feeling in the joint, come up, bounce, shift around a little bit, and then perhaps try it again. And if it still persists, just come out. 2 or 3 breaths. Up, extend one leg, and then the opposite leg, and then bounce and roll, releasing the hips. And then one final pose while we're here, Dandasana. Draw the flesh out from under the sit bones, tilt the pelvis forward, reach the heels, draw the toes back, spread the toes, internally rotate the thighs. Hands are there. If you start to collapse, use your hands to prevent collapsing, but ideally we're using our core to lift. Again, if you have tight legs, bend your knees enough that you can bring the belly forward, lift the chest, roll the shoulders back and down, and if you can do that with your legs straight, fine. Now, ease up a little bit and focus on your breathing. Now, slow the breath down, not as slow as you can possibly go, maybe 50% of the way there. So you're definitely breathing a little slower than you would normally. And then lock in. So maybe you're breathing in for 5 and out for 5, or maybe you're breathing in and out for 7. Whatever number you are at, lock in there. And then without letting the breath speed up or slow down, begin to work the pose. Now, as you begin to work harder, your body's going to start to burn more oxygen, and as you feel the body beginning to request more oxygen, speed the breath up just enough that you're still meeting the needs. So we're breathing at the slowest rhythm that still gives us enough oxygen for the body to be happy. And again, as we fatigue a little bit, you may have to speed the breath up a little more. Keep working the pose. Keep adjusting your breath. 2 or 3 breaths. Still working the mechanics of the pose, even though we're paying attention to the breathing. 1 more breath, and then bounce and roll. When you're ready, coming to our hands and knees for cat-cow. Placing your hands under your shoulders, your knees under your hips, and moving with the breath. On the inhale, lift the tailbone, open the heart, look up. On the exhale, tuck the tailbone, round low, mid and upper back, tuck the chin as you finish exhaling. Initiate the movement from the tailbone and let the movement flow up the spine like a wave. Bring a little more awareness into the action of the shoulders and the arms.
And then coming into a cat twist, placing your left shoulder or your left elbow on the floor, raising the right arm, and then twisting to the right with your upper body. Try to keep your right knee on the floor. If it starts to lift off the floor, ease up on the twist. And then breathing into this position. And then coming back to your hands and do another cat-cow. Repeating on the second side. Placing your right elbow or your right shoulder on the floor. And if your neck feels okay, float the left arm up and then open into a twist, turning to the left with your upper body. Make sure your neck feels safe. If it doesn't, back off on the twist and come up onto your elbow or onto your hands. Coming back to cat-cow. And then coming up to a standing position, tuck the toes, walk the hands in close to the knees, lift the hips. And if you're comfortable, you can lean into a forward bend. If your hamstrings or low back are a little tight, come up halfway, supporting weight with your hands on your knees. Bend one knee and then the opposite knee, moving the stretch from one leg to the other. Starting with a gentle stretch for the hamstrings, giving them time to warm up. If it feels healthy and pleasant, begin leaning into the stretch a little more deeply. Being careful not to rush. When you're ready, roll up, let the knees buckle, stack the vertebra, and then come up to the front of your mat. Bringing your hands together over the heart. Sweeping overhead. Firm the abdomen, lift the chest, open the heart, and on the exhale, reach the hips back and release into a forward bend. Buckle the knees as you roll up and stretch overhead. And continue on your own. Releasing into the forward bend, coming a little further into the forward bend each time until you are getting just the right amount of stretch without any strain. Work the overhead stretch a little more strongly, surrendering into the forward bend, hanging like a rag doll, rolling up lazy and loose, buckling the knees, stacking the vertebra. Adding a side stretch. Lift the left heel, flare the right ribs. Lift the right heel, flare the left ribs. Going side to side. Then coming back to center, arching into a slight back bend, and then finish with a supported forward bend, hands on the thighs, knees bent a little, and then if you prefer, walk your hands down towards the floor and release into a full forward bend. Take a breath or two, releasing into the pose, and then roll up to standing. Make sure you have plenty of space behind you for full 12-step sun salutation. Hands in prayer. Sweep overhead on the inhale. Swan dive on the exhale, placing fingers even with the tip of the big toe. Step the right leg back into a deep lunge. Breathing in, hold your breath momentarily as you step back into plank. On the exhale, pressing down to the floor slowly with control, draw through into cobra. Breathing in, roll the shoulders back, reach the chest forward, press the tops of the feet into the floor. Tuck the toes, lift the hips, press back into downward facing dog. Take a breath or two here. And then set the left knee on the floor, step the right foot all the way up into a lunge. Breathe in, standing forward bend on the exhale. Overhead stretch as you breathe in and back to prayer. One more time. Sweep up on the inhale. Swan dive as you breathe out. Fingers placed carefully alongside the tip of the big toe. Left foot leading, stepping back into a deep lunge. Hold your breath as you transition to plank, and then exhale as you start down towards the floor. Draw through into cobra. Press back into downward facing dog. Take a breath or two, working the pose. Any transition is fine. If you aren't sure, set the right knee on the floor and then step the left foot up into the lunge. On the exhale, step the right foot up into a forward bend. Overhead stretch as you breathe in, coming back to prayer. Next, we're working with Trikonasana, triangle pose. Step your feet wide, rotate, turning your left foot out at 90 degrees, turn your right foot in at 60, shift your hips to the right, lengthen the lower rib cage. If your mind has wandered, come back to the idea of breath awareness, noticing how your body wants to breathe, and then breathing just slightly slower until you find the slowest rhythm of breathing that is absolutely comfortable, that does not diminish the experience of your practice in any way. Look for a steadiness in the breath, a steadiness in the pose. And then coming up, switching sides, turn your right foot out, turn your left foot in. Shift your hips to the left and tilting the pelvis. Draw the stretch into the back of your right leg. Try to keep both sides of the rib cage lengthening evenly. The left hand can rest on the hip or float the left arm out horizontal, lined up with the shoulder girdle. Again, bringing your attention to the breath. Slow, smooth, fluid, deliberate, conscious breathing. Turning the feet pigeon-toed, leaning into a forward bend. Lean a little left and right, and then step the feet a little closer together, wider than your hips, but just barely. Interlace your fingers behind your back, a chest expander. Float the hands up off the hips. If this is challenging for you, don't work too hard. Just lift enough that you feel like you're working maybe 10%. Roll the shoulders back, open the chest. Those of you that are more flexible, continue to raise your arms up. If that's too easy, bring them out overhead and forward. And then focus on breathing with a complete breath, belly, ribs, chest, and shoulders. When you're finished, release your hands to the floor. Take a breath or two to relax. Step the feet together, bend the knees, roll back up to a comfortable standing position. Next, we'll work with balance. You're welcome to use any balance pose you would like. If you aren't sure, tree pose. Spread the toes on your right foot. Shift your weight to your right, and then either come up onto your toes to steady yourself, or you can lift the left foot off the ground, place it at the calf, or bring the heel up to the groin. Float the arms out, or if you feel steady, float the arms overhead. Again, slowing down the breath. Sometimes by paying more attention to the breath, our pose becomes steadier. Again, a long, slow rhythm. With each exhale, a descending current of heaviness, grounding, centering through the foot into the earth. Switching sides, spread the toes on the left foot, shift your weight to the left, and either lift the right heel and balance with your big toe, or float the foot off the ground, bring it to the calf, or bring the heel all the way up to the groin. Try to avoid putting the foot against the knee joint. Float the arms overhead. And again, bring your attention to the breath. Focus not on your balance as much as on the quality of your breathing. A large component of balance is trust, is believing. Finish with a supported forward bend, or lean into a deeper bend if it feels healthy. And next, coming down to the floor, working with a back roll. Take your blanket and roll it up tightly, or if you have a roller that you want to work with, take a moment to grab that. We'll start positioning the roller underneath the upper back, just below the top of the shoulders. You'll need lots of room behind you so that as you roll, you don't hit any furniture or the wall. Now, in each position, take a few breaths, stretch the exhale, and relax. Any position for the arms is fine. If you cannot get comfortable, unroll the blanket enough that this is easy. And if it's too easy, roll it up enough that it provides a little bit of action, opening the spine, stretching the ribs and chest. Occasionally, every 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 breaths, reposition on the roller by lifting your hips off the ground, pushing yourself over the roller so the roller moves down 1 or 2 vertebrae down the length of your spine towards your hips. Take about 4 more minutes to work your way all the way down the length of your back. In each position, focus on breathing and relaxing. With each exhale, surrendering, letting go. And if you can't let go, your roller is too big. As you work your way down the spine, you may have to adjust the size of the roller, making it larger or smaller depending on what area of your back you're working with. If you've been moving a little faster and you've finished early, go back to the shoulders and start over. Those of you moving more slowly, take a couple more minutes to finish up. Now once the roller is low enough down the back where you can grab it with your hands, then use your hands to reposition the roller. Each time you want to adjust, lift your hips and with your hands reposition the roller and then set your hips down again. 10 or 15 more breaths. If there's any area you've neglected, use this last 5 or 10 breaths to finish up. When you're finished, position the roller underneath the pelvis, hug both knees into your chest. Straighten one leg and pull the opposite knee in, and then extend the leg out over the roller, let it hang. Just taking a moment to stretch and open the groin, and then separate your knees apart, and then bring the opposite knee into your chest and straighten the other leg, and let it hang over the roller. Then grab one heel, pull the knee into your armpit, and again let the other leg hang over the roller. And then switch legs. Grab the opposite heel with both hands. Pull on the heel so your knee moves in towards the armpit and extend the other leg over the roller. Then grab both heels and draw both heels in towards the rib cage or the armpits. Play a little bit, straightening and bending the knees to add a little variety. Rocking side to side as you continue to draw the heels down towards the floor. And then releasing the feet. Bring your feet to the ground, lift your hips, remove the roller, set it to one side. Hug the knees into your chest. Roll onto your left shoulder. Hold the right knee with the left hand, draw the right knee towards the floor, and then twist the upper body away to the right. If there's a different version or variation on twisting that works better for you, feel free to use any variation that you choose. Focus on a complete back breath and slowing the breath down. Breathe into the upper back, mid back, low back, belly, ribs, chest, shoulders, and especially finishing with the right shoulder. Feel the shoulder rise a little as you finish breathing in. Let the arm get heavier as you breathe out. Take a breath or two. And then come back to center, hug your knees. Switching sides, roll to your right until the left knee touches the floor. With your right hand, anchor the left knee, pulling down on the knee, and with your upper body, twist to the left. Again, any variation is absolutely fine. What's important is that you are comfortable and getting benefit without strain. Then turning your attention to the breathing. Breathing into the upper, mid, low back, belly, and continuing into the ribs, chest, shoulders, and the left shoulder. And as you finish breathing in, feel the left shoulder rise to accommodate that last little bit of air. And as you breathe out, let that left arm get heavy. Take a breath or two. And then coming back to center. Hug both knees. Rock side to side. We'll be closing with Shavasana. If you need a blanket to support, you can place a rolled up blanket under the knees or under the neck. Whatever you need to be completely comfortable so that you are not distracted by the body. Draw the shoulder blades together. And if you can straighten the legs comfortably, that's fine. Feet hip width. Hands 6 or 8 inches from the hips, the palms turned up, shoulder blades drawn together and down the back. Take a breath, relax with the exhale, and then give yourself permission to fidget, adjust, reposition until you're satisfied. And then once you're satisfied, turn your attention to the breath. Notice the rhythm that your body wants to breathe in, and allow the body to breathe at that rhythm. And then slow the breath down. For 2 or 3 breaths, slow the breath down just 1 or 2%. Just enough that if you relax, the body speeds up the breathing again. Take a couple more slow breaths, then begin letting the body take over, and shift your attention to relaxing the face, the neck, the shoulders, the arms, the hands, the fingers. Take a deeper breath, let that all fall away. The feet, the ankles, the calves, the knees, the thighs. Loosening hips, relaxing the buttocks. Take a deeper breath. Let the arms and the legs fall away, distant, remote, and heavy. Let them fall away as if they weren't even a part of you anymore. Relaxing the belly, the ribs, the chest, the shoulders, the back of the neck, and softening the throat. The jaws, the lips, the tongue, the mouth. The eyeballs melting into the back of your head. The eyelids, the eyebrows, the forehead. Temples soft and hollow, and relaxing the scalp and crown of your head. And then slowly, lazily stretching, yawning. And then rolling to one side. And pushing up to a comfortable seated position.
So in closing, we'll take just a minute or two to practice one of my favorite pranayamas. And this is the pranayama sometimes called detached observation. Here, we let go of control of the breath, but we don't let go of control of awareness. We continue to pay attention to the breath without interfering, without judging. Okay? Witnessing the breath the same way you might lay on your back on a summer afternoon and watch the clouds without judging which clouds are better or worse or whether they're moving too quick or too slow. Letting all those thoughts fall away and simply observing the clouds. So we do that with our own breath. Now, there's many different ways to enter into this practice. We're going to do it by starting off in control. We're going to slow the breath down. So if a 4-4 rhythm or 4-5 rhythm is natural to you, we'll try going to maybe a 5-5 or a 6-6. A rhythm that requires not much but a little bit of effort to maintain. Then we're gradually going to let go of control. The body will probably speed up the breathing a little bit, and we allow that, but we pay attention, watching. It would be like taking your dog for a walk on the leash, and then at some point when it's safe, letting your dog off the leash and then enjoying watching what the dog does. Allowing the dog the freedom to explore the park, and you're still paying attention to it, but without constantly telling it what to do. A couple moments here. Make sure physically you're comfortable. First, breathe normally. Notice where you're breathing into naturally, where your body does not breathe in as easily. Begin to convert to a back breath or an abdominal breath. Let the chest become more passive. Try to breathe into the back areas and especially into the abdominal areas. And we're going to slow down the inhale and the exhale, but what I'd like for you to end up with is a rhythm where the exhale is a little longer than the inhale. So for instance, 4-5, breathe in for 4, out for 5, or a 7-9, or 7-10. So begin slowing down the breath and see how far can you slow down the breath with just a little effort. Not a lot, just a little. With the exhale a little bit slower than the inhale. As you're doing this, relax your face, your jaws, your lips, your tongue, your mouth, your eyeballs, the space behind the eyeballs. Feel the cheeks hang from the cheekbones. And then, very gently, the way someone might push a sailboat, a little miniature toy sailboat might push it out, or someone curling releases the curl. In the same manner, release control of the breath. Allow the body to take over, and then observe dispassionately from a distance, as if you were watching waves in the ocean. When you let go of control, know 2 breaths are the same. Every breath will be different, faster, slower, deeper, pausing, starting. Notice how you feel. Your body, your breath, and your consciousness. And opening your eyes when you're ready. Of all the pranayamas and meditations, this is one of my favorites. It straddles. It's both meditation and pranayama. The ability to let go of control while still paying attention is a real art. The best listeners in the world can do that in conversation. They can let go of the conversation, let go of controlling it, and flow with it while being fully present. The same is true of a truly great horse rider. They can be present with the horse, witnessing, feeling, sensing, knowing at the deepest level what is going on with the horse. Somehow the horse, in turn, knows what's going on with the rider, and that separation between rider and horse begins to blur, sometimes even to disappear. And that is what we want to find with our own breathing, where observer and breath merge, and there's just the experience of the breath moving. And that is one of the most powerful spiritual experiences. And it's profoundly healing, both physically, mentally, emotionally. The other nice thing about it is you can practice it anywhere, anytime. Sitting in a theater waiting for a movie to start, great opportunity to practice detached observation of breath. Or driving, sometimes halfway through a road trip, I'll begin to practice this meditation in a seated driving position. I'd like to thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. I'll be doing a special class next week for the free day of yoga, which is on Labor Day, and I'll send out some information in my newsletter. or you can check my website, yogateacher.com, and then go to yoga, go to free yoga, free day of yoga, and you'll find the details on that. Namaste.